Just when you think it can't get any worse, somehow it does. And that's the life of being an Arsenal fan. This is today's Arsenal Reaction Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show, joining you the morning after what was a unacceptable, unforgivable, uninspiring performance from Arsenal that really did somewhat raise a reality check, I think, for a lot of people, myself included, definitely, about Arsenal and their season and where we are and what's going on and what's going to change or what can change or how things can change. There's no slides today because in my mind I was like, I get up every single morning to put in a lot of effort to do this show. And if the players that I am doing a show about aren't willing to put in the effort, why should I? Why should I put in the effort to put a show together and all these slides? But what I am going to do is I'm going to open up the phone lines this morning to people that would like to talk. Maybe fans that went to the game yesterday, because I genuinely felt horrendous for those supporters. Going to Newcastle, lovely city, nice place, great people. But going all the way up there on a Saturday early kickoff is a hell of a trip. It's a hell of a commitment, monetary-wise, time-wise, effort-wise. And they got nothing back. Absolutely nothing back from the players that went out on that field yesterday. I was speaking to a Newcastle fan in a TalkSport show after the game, and I said, Newcastle, have been pretty poor in the last few games. They're winless in 5 ahead of this one. And you're very lucky you went up against an Arsenal team that just didn't care that day. It will tell Newcastle very little about them. They had some very good performances. Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall in particular had some really good displays. Joe Linton I thought was very good as well. But it wasn't like a Newcastle batter Arsenal because they didn't need to. 1-0 was all it was going to take. 1 goal is all it was going to beat Arsenal. Toothless, lacking in ideas, lacking in invention, lacking in creativity, lacking in everything. So good morning. What a lovely introduction that is. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routine. Sorry, it's not going to be the happy, clappy stuff that we've done in the past because it just isn't. It is not that way. As always, after defeats, I do like to raise the point of mental health and say that if you are struggling and if this result has affected you in a significant way and you need to take a break from things, please do. I always encourage our listeners to do that and encourage you always to take those breaks and to, of course, just jump back and take some time to get back into the swing of things. I always recommend that you do take those breaks if you need to and look after yourselves because there's more to life than football. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box, though. Stephen, Angela, Barry, Mohammed. We've got Red Star and Nakul and Amesy. Jimmy, we've got Moon, we've got Rice Slip, we've got Gooner76, and plenty more. Love you guys and girls too. I'm going to put the StreamYard link straight away into the chat box today because, as I say, there's no slides. I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts on some of the performances on the lineup, on the decisions before I take some calls. But the StreamYard link is in the description. It's now in the chat box as well. I just need to pin it so you guys can continuously see it. There we go. So if you'd like to hop on and give your thoughts and tell me where your head's at and tell me what's going on, please do. There's no excuses today, by the way. There's absolutely none. There's no, Odegaard's injured. Arsenal weren't fully fit. Arsenal were missing Calafiori. Arsenal, blah, 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 blah. There's no excuses for Arsenal's performance yesterday. Every single player that went out on that pitch yesterday should have been enough to beat Newcastle, especially a Newcastle side that aren't great at the moment, that are struggling, that aren't doing very well. And there was just such a lack of invention, such a lack of ideas. To be honest, I'm less concerned about the whole kind of the creativity and the tactics and the substitutions. I'm less concerned about that stuff. I'm concerned about the care. I'm concerned about the fact that no one on that pitch yesterday looked like they really, really wanted to win the game. No one looked like they really, really, and that goes for Saliba, that goes for Gabriel, that goes for Declan Rice, that goes for Saka. There was just a lack of everything. It just was not a Arsenal performance that you can sit there and say in any way, shape, or form that you can be proud of. There's also a few contexts that I want to address before I get some of our callers on as well. One of them is the transfer window one. I'm not a big fan of revisionism in this sense. I'm really not. That team that went out there yesterday should be beating that Newcastle team. Doesn't matter who you sign, who we should, in quotation marks, should have signed. That team's good enough to win that game. And frankly, you could have signed Lionel Messi. It doesn't matter if the team doesn't care. If there's no mentality to try and win a game, it doesn't matter what players you've got. That problem is worse. That is what is more of a concern. I also don't like this whole Arsenal have played some really tough fixtures. If you look at the fixtures of the teams we've played, if you look at the positions of the teams we've played in the table, it tells you that we're in a position where, that we've got some easier games coming up. If we play like that against Wolves, we're not winning. So why does it matter where the teams that we have played place in the league? Because if we play and have an attitude like we had yesterday against any of those teams, it will not matter what you come up against, because you won't win. Because you need to have the mentality to win, the drive to win, the invention, the creativity, the ideas, the nous to win those games. So it does not matter who you come up against, wherever they rank in the team, wherever they rank in the league, you won't win. So I know that everyone wants to kind of temper stuff, and usually that's me. I'm always the one that wants to try and bring context, bring explanation, answer some questions, but at the same time, you can't you can't talk about it in that way when you've been in some ways incredibly disrespected. And I felt, if I was a fan that was there, that I would have felt disrespected by that performance. I would have felt like I was owed an apology for that performance, because it was frankly just simply not good enough. Third point, if you're shouting Arteta out at this stage, you're still mental. You're still absolutely mad. Like, to come off the back of one game in this run of fixtures and say, oh, yeah, he's got to go. He's absolutely got to go. That's just, for me, the spoiled nature of a certain section of the fan base. I still think that's mad. We'll get to that stage one day. Today's not that day. So just even me being as critical as I ever am, no, we're not there. Right, let's get some callers on. Anthony's up first. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
I'm good. How are you?
Not great, mate. Not great, to be fair. Other than football, I'm good, though. Yeah, I'm good. Tell me where your head's at, bro.
I see a load of people online losing their heads, calling for the manager to be sacked, that he can't coach this team properly,
Yeah.
tactics, what he was there, and blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, it was a gutless and spineless performance by the lads, I'm sorry to say. I watched the game yesterday, and I don't know, if we play like this against Inter Milan, they're going to beat us. I don't know what the situation is going on with Arsenal currently at the present moment, where their heads are.
Yeah.
Newcastle is a difficult ground. Yes, this is the second consecutive game that we've lost to them away from home. I thought that, after the Liverpool game, you can take some solace, from that to say, okay, Liverpool game, we could have done better. But the Newcastle game with Saliba, Gabriel back, yeah, I don't know what's happening with this team currently at the present moment, because we're not as. I know Odegaard's missing, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to use that as an excuse.
We can't rely on one player. Yeah, we can't turn around and say that Arsenal aren't going to win the league because they've missed Odegaard, because Man City have been without De Bruyne for goodness knows how long. So
it's evident. I thought Ethan would have started this game. I was listening to one of your, one of your, videos the other day. Out of the 3 games, I thought Ethan could have started this game, because it looks like there's no creativity within this squad going forward. You're playing Mourinho, Declan Rice, and Jorginho and Trossard. Trossard in that left 8 position, it's not working. I don't know why Ethan didn't start this game, and it goes back to Arteta. Like, if he's old enough, he's good enough. He's shown quality against Preston the other day. Start him in this game. He will offer something different in that midfield because the team just look lackluster. It's like they're disinterested. And if we carry on like this going forwards, am I going to say, can we win the Premier League this season if we carry on this? I'd say no.
Is the answer?
I would say no. You know, it's like Arsenal looked like lost boys when Saka was in there, when Odegaard is in there.
Yeah.
But we still have quality going forward to. We should have won yesterday. Yesterday was a win. You know, it was a must-win game. Liverpool won. City dropped points. You know, the same team that we lost to, they lost to, and I'm just like, what is the mentality with these boys? What is the manager saying to them at halftime to like, okay, we're 1-0 down, let's get back into it. Last season when we went behind, boom, you know, response. This season it's just like lackluster performance, and I was just like, we deserve to lose. Like it is what it is. We deserve to lose.
Yeah.
If you're gonna play like that, then you deserve to lose, and you guys don't deserve to win the title. If that's your mentality going into the game that you 1-0 down, it's like no urgency, and it's just like, yeah, it's.
Well, how does he fix it? What does he have to do to change it? Because I think it's very defeatist to be all Arteta out at this stage. Like, I think it's very 21st generational rage quitting type attitude. Like, I think it's as bad of an attitude as our players had yesterday to just quit without even trying. So what are the solutions, Anthony, what we've got?
I think, you know, until Odegaard comes back, I say you have to start Ethan. You know, you got rid of certain players for Ethan to be there. You start him. You should have started him at the Newcastle game.
Yeah.
You know, give them something different in their midfield. Don't go with the same midfield because playing Trossard in that left 8 position, non-existent. You know, playing Thomas Partey in that right back position, again, I think that was a mistake. I don't know what's going on with Benny Blanco. If he's
not fully fit.
If he's not,
he's got some issues.
You know, if he's got some issues, you know, isn't there anyone else, you know, in terms of, you know, a right back, but
Tommy Asu, but he's injured as well.
This is the thing, like in that midfield, Thomas Partey playing with Declan Rice in that midfield, that's more of a, you see more of a balance there. The team's not in balance. Playing this 4-4-2 system that he's playing because Odegaard's injured, it's not working. And I think that teams are going to find us out going forward. I think this Newcastle is going to showcase if we play like this against Inter Milan, it's just like, it's going to be curtains for us. Like, you know, and
at the same time, you win against Inter Milan. That's a massive result, like, and that could completely turn things around and change the attitude. But it's so hard to see that as a reality based on what we've just witnessed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, okay, you have one good game, you have one bad game, you have one good game, you have one bad game. But we now need to go on a run going forward. You know, Liverpool hopefully will drop points. City again, they've dropped points. You know, so we have to go on a run, but he has to change on the team. And I think, again, this is where I have to criticise Mikel Arteta in terms of his tactics going forward. This game would have been perfect for Ethan to start. You don't have any creative players besides Ethan. Oh, your captain is not there. Vieira is not there. Smith Rowe is gone. And you're playing guys who, as good as Mourinho can be, he's not that solution, you know, to play with him, Trossard and Declan Rice. It's not working.
He's not enough in that midfield creatively.
And these are the cards that we've been dealt, but I'm hoping that he turns it around. You know, Inter Milan, then we've got Chelsea. Now, the way that Chelsea are playing at the present moment, you know, Odegaard's not going to be back for, you know, he's not going to be back. It's going to be too soon for him. He's going to be back after the international break. Change it up against Chelsea, because the way that Chelsea are looking now, I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea beat us. I would not be surprised.
Oh, I wouldn't be either if we play like that. No, of course.
Actually, if we play like we did against Newcastle, Chelsea will beat us. Despite the people want to say that, you know, Chelsea are this, Chelsea are that, we have to screw on our heads properly. We have to take the game to teams. We can't just like, hey, be defeatist. We can't do it. We've seen this so many times back in the day. Arsenal 1-0 down, their heads drop. Last season, there was urgency. There was fight. Look at the Luton game last season. when everyone thought we was down and out. And what happened? We won the game. We was just on it. But it's like this season, there's none of that. And I don't think that as a team that we've gelled this season properly as a team going forward, because Odegaard's been injured. We haven't gelled in terms of what he's tried.
That's exposed, I think, the fragilities, because we've been very fortunate in some ways with players like Saka, like Odegaard being fit the last 2 seasons without issue. This is the first season of the 3 where we've lost those players, and that's not an excuse. That is just me pointing to the fact that it's uncovered some fragilities that exist within the squad, that if you lose these particular players, that we don't have the depth. And I'm not saying that necessarily I'm putting the finger at the club saying we didn't sign good enough players, because I personally think it's incredibly difficult to find players that A, are good enough to be the depth to those 2 positions, and secondly, that are going to be happy knowing that for the majority of the season that they're going to be second fiddle to Saka and Odegaard. It's hard to find that. I think next summer I'm looking at that and going, we absolutely haven't got a choice but need to find someone that does that. But it's very challenging to do that.
I know, and I think the thing that everyone was shocked is that in terms of when Vieira went out on loan, apparently he asked to go out on loan. I'm like, well, that was a shock to everyone, because obviously when Smith Rowe went, there was talks that he was going to stay. Smith Rowe was going to go. Vieira's going to stay. Now that Vieira's gone, it's just like, you've left yourself short. You've trimmed the squad down, and I'm sorry, but again, that's down to Arteta, that's down to Eddie, for them to decide that, to trim the squad. You know that you've got a long season. You know you're going to get injuries. Don't just rely on your first 11 to be fit, because when you have injuries to key players like we have, there's going to be cracks showing. You're going to get exposed. And unfortunately, it is what it is. Like, I've got no sympathy for the manager at this stage. This is what he's done. These are the cards that we've been dealt, because they're thinking, yes, that Odegaard's not going to get injured. Saka's not going to get injured. And look what's happened. We look like lost boys out there without any creativity. And if he continues playing this 4-4-2 system, which personally I don't think is benefiting us. It worked for the Tottenham game because Tottenham play counter-attacking football, so you can expose their frailties. But when you come up against teams like Newcastle who do a mid-block or a low block, you're going to come unstuck. And then you're bringing on Ethan the 71st minute. Like, how is he going to try and change the game, 71 minutes coming onto the pitch?
Yeah.
So I thought the selection was bad anyway, in terms of having Trossard, Mourinho, and Declan Rice in the middle. I think, I'm like, why didn't Ethan start? Ethan had a great game. One of the players in the Preston game stood out amongst the rest, but yet you relegate him onto the bench again. I'm like, that was my fear this season, that I hope you're not going to do what you did to Smith Rowe. You're only going to play him a handful of games, but when you've got games like this to start him, if you've got no other creative players, you're going to leave him on the bench, and then you want him to try to do something when it's too late. Make the substitutions earlier. Don't leave it to the 71 minute. Either hook Trossard off half time and play Ethan so he's got more of the time to have an impact in the game. But 71 minutes, what's he going to do?
Yeah.
And after that, Newcastle just shut up shop anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to lose my head. I'm just going to wait at the end of the season.
I think it'd be mental to lose your head at this stage. But yeah, Anthony, I really appreciate you jumping on the call, mate, as always. Pleasure to speak with you, pal.
You too.
Thanks, mate. Enjoy your Sunday. Lovely stuff. On the Waneri thing, I didn't put him in my starting lineup for this game because of the way in which we kind of built up to this game. I thought he should have been starting against Southampton. I thought he should have been starting against Shakhtar. He obviously did start against Preston. I would have felt comfortable starting him in this game had we have started him in those. I feel like the build-up to this game has been wrong in terms of preparing players up. Waneri, we could have given him more time, more minutes, more acclimatization. The Vieira one, like for me, Vieira was widely criticised when he was here. Like, Vieira was never the saviour when Vieira was at the club. So this idea that, we've let Vieira go and that's been the downfall. If the difference between Arsenal winning and losing these last 3 games is Vieira, I think we are wildly underestimating the challenge of these 3 games, because I personally, with all respect to Vieira, he just simply is not good enough to be a difference maker in these 3 games based upon what we have seen throughout the course of that. I understand why people think that it was mad that we let him go. Thank you. But I do think that there is a position whereby you're looking at Vieira and going, he's the answer. I don't think he is. I've got my charger. Right, let's get TJR onto the call. He's up next, then Tammy's after that. So switch your camera on, pal, and have a chat. How you doing, mate? You good, well?
Oh yeah, as good as can be.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, it's. Are you ready for this one, Tom?
Go for it, man.
Halloween.
Hit me with it.
How about that for a horrible performance?
Yes, indeed.
There's all the tactical stuff, but if you weigh it up, it was just plotting. It's a lot of 5 out of 10s from everywhere. It's too early for me to call the season done because it's a long way out. And even things like, I think City, didn't they lose as well?
Well, I think I sat down this morning. I was like, I'm going to do this show, and I'm not even going to mention that City lost because I just feel like it doesn't give me any joy because it just makes me think, what a missed opportunity. And also, I could talk about how it shows that this season teams are going to drop points. That last season you could point to the fact that Liverpool had a 10-point lead at one stage and blew it. I could point to all these things, but I'm not going to do that because it doesn't matter if we don't sort our own crap out,
Fair enough. The only reason I bring it up is because squad size is something that I'm sort of trying to figure out whether it's going to hurt us long term, whether City are going to recycle or, disappear into the distance or go on a huge run. I think we're 2 players short, and we've been 2 players short for a while. And most of them are in the forward line. So I'd love Jesus to, switch it back on. But realistically, if you're not playing Sterling...
Are we 2 players short because players like Jesus simply just haven't been good enough? If we had the Jesus that arrived at Arsenal performing like he was then, we'd feel a lot more comfortable. If Raheem Sterling was the player that he said he was going to be, the best of him that was going to arrive, we wouldn't be saying that. The reality is that both Sterling and Jesus, no matter little bright sparks we might have seen from Sterling in particular, it doesn't matter because they're just not of the required level right now.
I agree with you, but I respectfully disagree that the one thing that rotation really affects is not just confidence, but knowing that if you're subbing someone on, for example, and you don't have the options there, the other team might pack themselves and go, oh, there's these players coming off the bench and they're in form and they're firing. And Nwaneri coming off, waving one in against Preston. They go, okay, what's this kid got? Well, we're going to have to pay attention to him. At the moment, we don't have to pay attention. If Sterling could play number 9, I would agree with you. But it seems Jesus and Sterling both can't give Havertz any sort of rest. And Havertz is slowly grinding down. And maybe it'll turn into, the winter break or whatever will pep everyone back up. But it's just small things. Like Zinchenko's trying to come on with not much game time, which is fine, but he's meant to inject life into the play when everyone else is sort of not progressing the ball because they're all a bit knackered. It's things like that. And Marino, for me, is a barometer. He's not something that lifts. He's sort of a go with it kind of guy. That if the seas, the tide's well, he's scoring and he's pushing and everything's not downhill skier, which sounds a bit harsh, but he's not going to win you a game off his own boot like, Saka or Odegaard or things like that. But he's in those sort of positions where you need creativity, whether it's Jorginho dictating the tempo from that position. Moreno's kind of he's a second midfielder. He's a guy that's going to bump up against people and do the best that he can do. The high end is lower than the rest of those guys. Anyway,
it's just tiring, isn't it? He's exhausted. It's frustrating because we've been on such a progressive run where you've gone from 8th to 5th to 2nd to 2nd, getting closer and closer and closer to winning this league, and then you're expecting to go that next step again, and then this season has hit us like an absolute cricket bat, and
it's hit a wall, and I'm pretty pessimistic. I thought coming into the beginning of this season, injuries would knock us down a little bit and we'd be pushing with Liverpool to be 3rd, 2nd, and City would, who knows what would happen with their point stuff. But the only thing I'm really worried about from that Newcastle game is this happens in, maybe it's a false comparison with basketball, that there are coaches that get tuned out over certain times.
Yeah.
So you might be up for big games, but over times, maybe Arteta's pushing things and certain players are exhausted by not just the fatigue of the physical stuff, but the mental stuff. Do you want pickpockets to rock up to, thing when you're in a shitty mood? Probably not. Pardon my language there, but you want the extra sort of 10% pushing you for more to get the top end performance, or do you want the low end to be not as low? Like, is the ceiling worth more than the basement? And it feels like Arteta's always been trying to manage those subtle grey area, soft skill things. And that's my only concern with this result, because it just felt like no one rocked up and no one wanted it.
It did. That was the most disappointing thing. Yeah. That's what annoyed me the most, was the attitude. It was just, it was unforgivable for me. Right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time, Matt, as always.
Yeah, no problems. Have a good therapy session together.
Yeah. Enjoy, mate. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Speak to you soon.
Mate.
Tammy's up next. Let's get Tammy on the show. You doing, Tammy? You good? You well?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, mate. I can hear you. Yes.
All right. Well, personally, I'm good. Football doesn't affect me that much.
Good. Because if it did, it would be a struggle today. Yeah.
But with the team, I'm not happy at all. I'm actually worried. Feels like maybe it's time for another Dubai steak session.
We can't rely on just a holiday to Dubai to say, if the difference between Arsenal winning the league or not is a holiday to Dubai, like, what are we doing? What's that? We got to look more within.
And yesterday was horrible, actually, because it's the first time that since the 2022-2023 season that I started questioning whether we could actually win the league. Or whether this manager can get us over the line, because first I noticed that we're doing this thing where the striker drifts to the wing, the winger drifts in, and then there's a cross. No one's in the box, just like the 2020-2021 season, that almost like 9 games we lost. Then we drew like 3-1, just one, and
we were winless. We had 1 win in 10.
That 1 in 10 half of a season. I actually think there's no creativity up front. Yesterday.
Yeah. James Benge actually put a tweet up yesterday. I'll share the screen so everyone can see it. But he put the tweet was, "Tell me you're missing Martin Ødegaard without telling me you're missing Martin Ødegaard." And let me just get it up for you here. That shows you kind of the reality of Arsenal. That's the second half passes. There's two accurate passes to an Arsenal player in the box. There's 5, I think I count 5. That's from outside to inside the box. 5 passes attempted. 6 there. 6 passes attempted into the box. When you're losing and you're attempting just 6 passes and only 2 of them reach a target, is telling.
You know what's funny? There's a kind of following on a Twitter that has this belief, or that's operating under this belief, that Ødegaard is holding back.
I know, it's mad, that, isn't
it? I don't want to mention names, but there's a popular guy that calls it Ødegaardism, and he actually claims the presence of Ødegaard in the midfield is stifling Saka, is stifling Martinelli, and it's horrible.
Thank God he's not here, because my goodness me, we've been unleashed since he's been absent from the team. We've been absolutely we've gone off the scale with Ødegaard in the side, haven't we?
Exactly, we won every game by 5-0 and stuff. I mean, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
And the third one, the third worrying sign yesterday was that I'm actually bothered about the transfer plan. You know, everyone talks about how okay we signed level raisers. It wasn't a time for Maki sign,
Sure.
but
Well, it
short
could
of
have been.
short of Calafiori, really. I've not been even Calafiori has his flaws, but at least you can tell
He's a
he's
good
good
player.
enough
Like you can tell, he's a very good player.
to replicate what we had before. I'm
Yeah.
not seeing that with Merino.
We didn't make a
really.
signing that's just taken us from a team that was 2 points off the league to a team that's then going to win it. Like the signings we made in a difficult window were because it wasn't like there was obvious candidates for me, you know, and we talked, you know, we did shows every single day throughout the window talking about who we could sign, who we might sign, and it's not like, I mean, Liverpool didn't do any business, you know, at all. They brought in Chiesa, that was it. Manchester City have brought in Savinho, of course, as well, but beyond that, haven't, you know, Gundogan returned. It's not like it was a window that the big teams did some mad business. You know, you think about Man United brought in Agato, who's been pretty darn awful for them, you know. So it's not like we look at the summer transfer window and went, oh, Arsenal missed out on this obvious target and this obvious target and this obvious target. But it's frustrating that I think I said it was a 6 out of 10 window. I said after we didn't replace Reece Nelson, after we loaned him back out, you know, I was fuming to see him leave after we'd brought in Sterling, and then you've let Reece Nelson leave. The player that we haven't really replaced is Nketiah. Like, you've let Nketiah go, and you don't have another striker option other than Jesus, whose form has been, as we know, very poor.
Very poor, and Sterling has been underwhelming, really. Just
100% underwhelming is right. Yeah,
and that's been euphemistic about it, because
is it underwhelming or is it expected? Because like I don't think he's done anything different than he was doing, you know, at Chelsea necessarily.
It was expected for me, and I always said it. If just get the best of players, forget about this rescue mission for players that are not they are not exactly pulling up trees where they are. Just get the good player, get him in, and let's win. You know, I've not seen that with Sterling, and yesterday it was glaring. It was so obvious. You know, we couldn't create. We were so weak in both in possession and out of possession, because they were just bullying us, really. You know, we literally couldn't create. We couldn't move the ball really fast. All the transitions were just passing back, and it was annoying. Really,
Yeah,
I'm not even surprised. And, you know, if we continue like this, I'm sorry, we're not winning any league. In fact, we will struggle to finish in the top
You don't need to apologize. That's just a fact, mate. that's just the reality, you know, the situation. Yeah, Tammy, thank you so much for your time, mate. I really appreciate you jumping in and being patient as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tammy. Lovely stuff. Forder is up next. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, mate. Well, I say that. I probably look like I'm crying. I've been up all night with the littlest one. The game wasn't great yesterday. Is
that some kind of analogy for Arsenal in some way? Like, yeah,
I wish it was. But yeah, so could be better, mate. Could be better.
Where's your head at with this? Like, I think it's a really easy question to answer in some ways. It's harder in others because you can go into finer details about it. But like, I guess probably the better question is there any confidence that things will change?
I don't think it can get much worse. I'll put it that way. This run reminds me of last year. Was it last year when, like, around December time, when we had the Liverpool game, West Ham, Fulham went on a bit of a slump? Reminds me of that. I mean, I think there's a big reaction online with people saying, you know, we're out of the title race. I think it's way too early to say that. There's got to be an upturn in form.
I empathise why people think we are, because
yeah, I do as well. And to be fair, I think maybe, I mean, you're similar age to me. Going 20 years without winning the title, you start to get that PTSD of like, oh,
of course,
here we go again. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So to speak. But yeah, hopefully there'll be an upturn. Odegaard returning. Calafiori, I think he has been a real like lease of life on that left-hand side. The best we've seen of Martinelli is when he's been in the team. For me, the right back situation with Ben White missing and no Timber there. as good as Partey has been recently, and to be fair, I thought he was one of the people that could kind of walk off the pitch yesterday holding his head high. There was an obvious lack of the same kind of pressing from Partey in that position. And I think Newcastle realised they could double up, triple up on the wide players without any kind of real worry of overlapping or any kind of overloading on those sides. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of an upturn, Tom.
I think that obviously you can have bad games. It feels like, you know, the Liverpool game, I thought we were unlucky. You know, I thought we deserved more than we got in that game. And obviously we had players like Timber and Saka who were burnt out by, you know, the time they came off because they weren't fully fit. And if they had been fully fit and ready for that game, I feel like we would have beaten Liverpool. And obviously we were unlucky with the Gabriel injury and, you know, further situations that cost us sad in that game, and not having Saliba available as well in controversial circumstances. So I know that this team can be great. I know they can put on some brilliant performances. You know, we nearly beat City this season away from home. We've come very close to and it seems like there's fine margins between Arsenal looking like a team that would, you know, be competing or would be sitting top of the table right now, and a team that now looks devoid of ideas, imagination and effort, and has got fans thinking, what the hell is the point at the moment?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think when you look at it as well, like, we've seen it in the past. We weren't kind of free flowing before Christmas last year, and then we went on that amazing run. It's not out of the question that we do that again.
Of course.
And yeah, you're completely right. In terms of circumstances, I don't think there's been many other teams. I think Leicester's the only team that I can think of that had quite a few red cards similar to us and then went on to win the league. So,
yeah,
I mean, take of that what you will. I mean, maybe that's not a good omen. But we have had these like extraordinary circumstances. I think at the beginning of the year, if anyone said to you, like before the summer, we're going to go on and buy another kind of centre back / left back in Calafiori, we've already got, you know, Timber, Tomiyasu, Saliba, Gabriel, like.
But I mean,
on and on.
The issue I've got with that is that that's proven to be right. We absolutely should have signed Calafiori because of the, you know, the issues that we've had in defence. I think the issue that people rightly bring up is that there's not been enough of an emphasis on attacking quality signings so far.
Yeah, I saw some comments earlier about getting in a player like Gyökeres. I mean,
yeah, of course.
I'm not completely against it. However, I would say,
if Gyökeres was instead of Havertz yesterday, is the performance any different?
No. And probably you look at where the spaces that Havertz is having to pick up. Like the system has changed with Odegaard out of the team. Havertz is picking up those right spaces. And it's completely changed so many things. Like it's not just the way we attack, it's the way we press, it's the way we kind of pass into the box. And it's a real difficult situation for me. Like prior to the game, I had a little podcast with Sharoy, and we predicted the exact same lineup as Arteta went. My biggest concern was that if you're not going to put Nwaneri in for the start, that maybe at that halftime point when you're looking at Trossard losing most of his duels, not kind of making the right decisions, just make the change earlier. Just do it quickly, because if I can see it, I'm pretty sure Arteta is seeing something, and maybe it's a little bit more faith that he has in the players. But yeah, unfortunately, we need a little upturn quickly.
What do you think about the people that would sack him now because of what we've seen?
I wouldn't agree with it, Tom. I'll put it that way.
It's a very conservative way of answering that question.
I mean, I've watched one of our greatest managers ever in Arsene Wenger have, you know, a drought of trophies and had to sit there and say, you know, we stick by him. I've then watched Emery come in, and do you remember we had I don't know how many shots we conceded, like game after game after game.
You know, so memory. Yeah,
exactly. And year on year, progression has been evident. You know, points have been better. Our defense has been better. Our attack has been better. We have been so close to winning this title. I think to react in November when we have had all these injuries, these red cards, we've played. I mean, we've played 3 of the bottom 10 teams, and 2 of those, I believe, were away. So we have had an extraordinarily difficult start to the season. I think to then start saying Arteta out, I think is just crazy.
Yeah, I think it is crazy. I know why people do it. You know, we live in a very rage quitting type world these days. It's just the reality of 2024, I think, and just where people's heads are at. And, you know, when the going gets tough, people just want to quit. And that's a sad state of reality, but that is where a lot of people's heads are at. I recognize the greater context of our season. Looking at yesterday's game had nothing to do with the fixture schedule, had nothing to do with the injuries, had nothing to do with it, because in my mind, it didn't matter who was available for us, whether Odegaard was there, Calafiori was there, whether Timber was fully fit, no matter what, you know, the way in which we went into that game and approached that game and had the attitude for that game, no matter who we had, whether we had Gyökeres up front, Odegaard in midfield, we were losing because the attitude was off. The mentality was wrong. Yeah, and you 100%. Can't. And when that gets to that stage in a game, it's a concern. When it gets to that stage over a course of a month or two, it's very, very, very concerning. That's when you start thinking about managerial side of things and what's going wrong. Because if it becomes systemic, that's when you can't change it. If it's a one-off game, which I look at the Liverpool result and the Preston result, and you know those performances against Preston and Liverpool, and go, I know what this team can do. I know what this team is capable of. I look at the Man City result, as we've already talked about, the performance there. You know, the Bournemouth game is a little bit of an anomaly because obviously we played 60 minutes with 10 men, but we weren't exactly great in the 30 minutes that we had 11 men on the field. But yesterday's result, and yet it wasn't even the result, it was the performance is what has got my back up so much. And as I said, my primary feel of frustration is actually for the fans who went. Like, I can't get over the fact that those fans were repaid for their efforts for that game with that performance. And I just hope the players realise that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I live at the end of the world down here, so I don't get to travel up to Newcastle very often. But when I chatted to Sharoy, I mean, he brought up that going to St. James's Park is really difficult. And I said, you know, you need to play the team, not the occasion. And it seemed like we didn't even do that. We didn't even get dragged into like a bit of a dogfight with them like we've seen in the past. It was laboured. Lots of duels were lost. I think it was like maybe the highest amount of duels we've lost under Arteta, if not like the top two. It does concern me slightly that one, the application wasn't there, but in terms of leadership, not just leadership in terms of talking to people, but just like making decisions on the ball and being brave. I think that's one thing that Odegaard does do, that he's able to kind of make the brave decisions and not always kind of turn out. I watched quite a few players in terms of, we had Timber yesterday, we had Partey at times dropping into that midfield situation, we had Rice, we had Marino, we had so many players kind of congesting that area. And I just thought, surely at some point, regardless of the manager's instructions, you need to kind of take it upon yourself and go, as a fullback, I'm going to stay out of that position. Or maybe as Havertz, you go, I know I'm dropping into these zones and I've been told this through instruction. Be brave, be a leader and go, no, I'm going to go up top. I'm going to start hitting those central zones. I'm going to ask questions of the centre-backs. And that for me is kind of just as concerning as what it seemed to be body language-wise.
Yeah.
But on to the next match, Tom. On to the next match.
Indeed, and it is Inter Milan, and that's a hell of a challenge, but it's also a hell of an opportunity to you know, I just hope this performance. I hope Arteta's given a real kick up the backside. I hope he gave them the hairdryer treatment after the game. I hope you made them recognise how much of a disservice they did to the supporters that are up there, and how much they need to respond. Because a performance like that successively is going to be, you know, a very, very dark place to be. Forder, thank you so much for
on that note, before I go, two things, Tom. What are your thoughts of kind of the Martinelli? His name's come up a few times because you say about like hairdryer treatment. I noticed that obviously there was the Pepe thing when Arteta came out and kind of lambasted him in the press. I've noticed now on a couple of occasions he's mentioning Martinelli missing chances. Do you think that's something that's
in response? Was that where I think it was a female interviewer asked him, like, you didn't really create too many chances, and he said, so and so had a chance. Martinelli had a big chance. I don't think that was a pointed thing about Martinelli. I think that was a pointed reaction to her question. I don't know who it was who was doing the interviewing, but I think in his mind he was defending his team creating more chances than people were giving him credit for, which he's going to do. Like everything that he says in interviews and press conferences, you have to take with a grain of salt, because that's not always what he actually believes. He says one thing in the press and he'll say another thing behind closed doors to the team. He will be fuming from what I'll be aware of. He will be utterly fuming with his team's performance, while he'll go out and defend them in the press, which is all we get exposed to, other than the Amazon documentary, of course. It's that's what I think. But yeah, what was the other point?
It was just that. Apologies for the last time we had a chat. I lost all the audio, didn't I, and stuff.
Yeah.
So
no
I do apologise for that, mate.
No, so it's not your fault, man. It happens. I think. Did you DM me? Because I think you dropped me a DM, and I've, as always with my DMs, as people will know, I end up being really bad at responding.
You were in process of moving house and stuff at the time.
So it's been a crazy month. We'll sort out a re-record, mate. No problem at all.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Nice to have a chat, mate.
Likewise, mate. Speak to you soon. See you later. Bye. Lovely stuff. Make sure you're showing plenty of love to our guests, by the way, in the chat box. They've been absolutely excellent. So please do. Mike's going to be up in a second. Probably might be our last guest. We might be able to fit one more in. Just want to take a couple of comments as well. A super chat from Bill says, Declan looks like a guy who's played too much football in the last 2 years. Not the same player this year. He looks knackered. And Al says their goal started with a Partey bad clearance. I mean, I'm not even necessarily looking at the goal. Was a brilliant cross and a brilliant header from Isak. And again, it shows you what one moment of creativity from two top players in Gordon and Isak can provide. But we didn't show any of that now at all. Let's get Mike onto the show then. And how you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
I'm okay, thanks, Tom. Yep,
good.
All things considered.
All things considered, indeed. Bring me back down to earth, mate. Tell me why I should be hopeful, why I shouldn't be joining the masses of sandwich boards and flaming torches and all of this lot.
We need a trip to Dubai, obviously, but
because that's the difference always. Yeah.
Look, I mean, the word mentality keeps on popping up.
Yeah,
and will keep on popping up, I suspect, after a performance like that. But it's a little bit of a broad umbrella sort of term, really, that I don't think encapsulates what's really going on there. Because I've no doubt that the team wants to win a game when they step on a pitch. You couldn't get someone more passionate than Arteta in terms of, you can see the way he behaves on the touchline. There are a couple of things perhaps that are contributory without wanting to make excuses.
Here we go.
I'm going to try. But if we look at the difference between now and perhaps where we were towards the back end of last season, where we lost one game in a gazillion. There is a noticeable difference from 2 points of view. First of all, it does appear as though the belief is perhaps waning a little bit. If we look at our response to situations where we weren't behind, if we looked at the way we were when we walked onto a pitch in those first few minutes, if we looked at be it the first few minutes or the last few minutes, there appeared to be a belief that we would win the game. And that was not only evident on the pitch, but was evident in the stands as well, I suspect. What looked to me as though what was happening yesterday is that, oh my God, we got beat off Bournemouth. We didn't have a convincing display against Shakhtar. We could have lost the Liverpool game quite easily. And all of a sudden, you've got 3 or 4 games, and on the top of perhaps knowing that with some key players either suspended, not on the pitch, or injured.
Yeah,
there's got to be a point as a player where you sort of doubt, even though you maybe know that you're good enough. There's got to be a doubt starts to creep in that says, "Hey, can we do it?" You're on the receiving end of a 12th minute blinder of a goal, which sort of suggested that Isak is the man for us. But if over the look at how we act as a fan base in terms of how much our belief has diminished over the last few weeks in terms of whether we're that good or not that good. There's no doubt at all in the talent that this team possesses. There's no doubt at all that some of the relationships which made the end of last season so damn good, some of those relationships have been fractured simply because of availability. And we're bringing on, again, we're in the situation where we're bringing on Ben White, who's injured. We don't know. Gabriel trained no more than 1 day last week. So we don't know. We don't know not only the belief that we can win this game, and therefore the intensity from that we can play at, but also in terms of the physical capabilities of some of the players on the pitch. So although that's not saying it's acceptable in any way, shape or form, and that we shouldn't be gutted, because I was, there are a few players I could look at on the pitch and say, hey, look, you're not good enough. I don't buy into this Vieira ESR shouldn't have sold them not stuff, because
that's not the difference between Arsenal winning the league or winning that game yesterday. Like, that's a reaction. That's a reactive response.
It is. It's looking for something to chuck the I'm hurt dart at. So I don't subscribe to that. The difficulty is the solution is difficult. The solution has got, if there is a mentality issue created by a diminishing belief in that, hey, we are actually good enough to do this, then the solution to that is to win a game or two.
But eventually, though, it will be on the manager, though. Like,
undoubtedly, because that's
when you've got a team that's good enough to win games, as we do, or we're good enough to beat Newcastle, we're good enough to beat Bournemouth. I believe we were good enough to beat Liverpool when we played them, and City when we played them. But if there's a mentality problem that persists to a certain degree, and I don't think we're there, I think we're quite a way away from being there. But if it was to persist, that's when you start talking about the managerial situation. Like,
it is.
People, what I always want to stress is that people want attach. We're football fans, so naturally this happens. But the footballification of opinions in this, like, if you're not just an Arsenal fan these days, it's like you have to be an Arteta in fan or an Arteta out fan or a fan of. Like, it's feel like you have to nail yourself to a board, and any quiver from moving away from that view will get you criticised for being inconsistent or being a flip flop or whatever. People need to realize that there is no one person that is bigger than Arsenal Football Club at all, ever. And if you can, until you can't come up with a defense for a person's position or a player's position or a manager's position, all the while there is an argument that you can back and support and, defend with evidence, then that's fine. It also doesn't mean that you can't not criticize decisions and the manager and certain players when things go on. But there's such like this weird social dynamic where people feel as though there's sides in this, and like this channel's like pro Arteta. It's never been, and it's never going to be. It's always going to be about objectively and groundedly looking at where Arsenal are at, criticising what needs to be criticised with evidence, and backing what needs to be backed with evidence. And then we invite people on like yourself, Mike, and others to challenge and bring up new points of view. And rarely do we ever get anyone that is quite hysterical, if ever, to be fair. So, and
that's a credit to the community, and that most people who come on aren't gnashing teeth and stuff like that.
Oh, Judge! I imagine what Judge was like yesterday, gnashing his teeth.
Sure, it wasn't an hour after the even the Arsenal Vision boys were a little perturbed. I mean, you're absolutely right in terms of people feel they have to position themselves with sides. Party right back or not right back is another one. I mean, but the reality is that I had a quick flick after the team was announced. I had a quick flick, as I often do, around some of the major channels, and nobody was criticizing that starting lineup. Or well, maybe
of course,
maybe Mwery could have played, but he's likely to come on. He's likely to come on later anyway. That was the only, and then not quite sure about this party in the back four. But the reality was that we defensively we actually looked quite strong.
It was just boring, mate. Like
it was cool, and we lacked progression. That was what we lacked from the back four. If we which we do get when White is a fit right back, or when Calafiori is playing left back, or when we perhaps have a little more of a barrier in midfield, so Saliba can push forward and progress like that. So that, to me, I mean, it was a whole team event. There wasn't one or two players. I don't think it was a whole team event, and we just seemed to lose that belief in what we were doing. Every pass looked shaky in terms of.
Well, Zinchenko came off the pitch, passed the ball to someone. Havertz passed the ball to someone. Like that showed you their heads had gone. Like the belief had got as soon as the second half started. I was thinking at half time, Arteta's got to get into this team, and I'll know within the first 2 minutes of the second half whether we're going to win. And I knew within the first 2 minutes we're losing this game. Like
I had exactly the same. We might
no
nick an equaliser at best. Is what I felt.
And Declan Rice, by the way, missed a huge chance to steal that equaliser at the end.
He did.
And
another day, Trossard shot that got blocked would have screwed.
Yeah, Moreno, of course, was one on 6 yards. If that goes in, maybe the mentality changes from when he smashed that ball against Hall in the box. Like who knows? But we shouldn't need a catalyst.
No, you shouldn't. And we can't blame ref. I thought the ref was actually really.
Yeah, I thought he had a good game. Rarely one of the games I thought refs were right. I'm definitely not blaming the referee after that one. Yeah, we will when we need to, but not after that game. No.
So, in terms of solutions, we need to find a win.
Yeah.
Those who, if we can, we're not getting the respite though, are we? I mean, we've got Inter and then Chelsea both away over the next few days. That's not going to be easy. But I would also dismiss this idea that, Newcastle haven't done well recently. They haven't had Isak since the beginning of September.
Sure.
Up to the last 2 games.
Sure. And he's come back and scored in 2 games. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
So again, I get that, but we're good enough to beat them. Like, that's the thing.
We are.
Even if they're good, we're good enough to beat them. But only if we have the attitude that was not on display yesterday.
And as we didn't show that belief, their belief.
Of course, you inspire, don't you? You inspire others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what's gonna change. In that something. Maybe it is starting him against Chelsea. Chelsea are a different ball game because they'll give us more space.
Yeah,
they won't do that mid-block thing that Newcastle did so well yesterday. So I've seen this a few times before, but. This is a damn good team. And has the capabilities. We just can't afford for this current blip to go on for much longer if we're serious about mounting any sort of reasonable challenge in the Premier League. It's not gone.
No, of course it's not gone. I know it's. I come back to this point. I said it earlier. Like it's without question a state of mind, and people are just different. And I'm not this way inclined where I'm saying title's done, title's over, Arteta needs to go or whatever. I'm just not that way. Like if you want that type of people, places you can go to get that. That's not me. Sure. I'm never going to be that way. If I think that we are beyond repair, like I have done in the past, like I thought we were when we lost to Villarreal in the Europa League semi-final, I'll say it. But I don't feel like we're there yet. I just feel like I feel like we had one of the days where nothing was. There was no invention, no motivation, no attitude, and that's unforgivable. And rightly, we've called that out. Absolutely. But we need to respond to it in midweek. And if we have the same performance that we saw again against Inter Milan, very concerning. If we have the same performance again like we had today against Chelsea again, then you're getting into some very, very worrying territory, and some you're getting close to a point of where does it turn around, and is it going to turn around? And if it's not, what do you need to do to change that? Which, considering you've just given a contract to the guy only a few months ago, is a big question.
The Chelsea game is more of a worry to me than the Inter game. I'd take a point.
I think a point in the San Siro would be a good point. I obviously want to win, but there's no doubt in my mind that would be a very good point to get in the Champions, because it's our toughest Champions League game of the league phase. So get a point there, and I think it's still good. We're obviously still unbeaten in the Champions League as well, and we've got some much easier games than that. But I think a win at San Siro would be historic. It'd be great.
That might be a game changer.
I think people underestimate actually how much of a game that is. So we'll see how that goes. Mike, thank you for your time, mate. Always a pleasure.
Sorry, I couldn't be more therapeutic.
Oh, mate, this morning, that's in itself an impossibility. So I don't blame
Absolutely.
you.
And good on you, as always, for stepping up and doing this, even though the pain's there, mate. It's always so appreciated.
Thanks,
by
mate.
not me, but the whole community.
No worries, fella. Appreciate it. Thanks, pal.
Cheers, big fella. Catch you later.
Cheers, mate. Lovely stuff. Thank you to all of our callers today. I understand that it's always going to be a difficult one. You know, this is part and parcel. You do the shows for the good, you do it for the bad, you do it when we're bad, you do it when we're good. You know, that's just part and parcel of it. I hope it's maybe brought some context, some perspective, some therapy to some of you. I get there's anger. I really do. I empathize with it. I know where people are coming from. Even the people that I think, I disagree wildly with the whole Arteta outside of things after that game. I empathize with your anger. I know where you are, where you're at. I hope that it simmers, and that I hope that we can turn things around, because, we are only one game away from a win against Inter Milan, from it being a very different mood again. I have worries, I have concerns. I just hope we see a response, because the fans, us fan base as a whole, deserves that response. We're much better than we're looking right now, and that needs to change. Please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning bright and early once again to round up all the latest Arsenal news and the rest of the results, of course, on the weekend, and we'll finally get a look of where we do now sit in the Premier League after all of the rest of the results. Have a great Sunday. Take your mind off football if you can. Go do some other things. I'm off to an all-you-can-eat barbecue today, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to help my mood. That's definitely for sure. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.